Keita Suminoe is an ordinary guy, except that everything in his life is messed up. You see, some years ago when his mother passed away, his degenerate father, you'll see why I call him that, remarried another woman. The woman happened to have two daughters who just can't stop seducing Keita. That's right, this is Sweet Home Alabama. Keita wakes up one day with his hand feeling all numb and heavy. When he opens his eyes, he realizes that both of his crazy sisters, Ako and Riko, are actually sleeping right beside him. This clearly freaks Keita out, who has never seen these two girls as anything but his sisters, but the two girls haven't begun to show how crazy they can get. As soon as the two girls wake up, they take turns kissing their little brother. And no, this is not a peck on the cheek, it's a full-on romantic, actually more sensual kiss. Thankfully, Keita is a sensible man and doesn't like his stepsister's inappropriate behavior. Unfortunately for him, his whole family was actually hit in his head when they were born. They think that it's okay that Riko and Ako act this way. His father even goes as far to say that even his stepmother was fair game, even though it would make him sad. It's almost time for Keita to join high school, and he desperately wants to go to a school far away from his sisters to avoid them. But his sisters seem adamant that he gets into the same high school as them. Keita has managed to avoid them so far, but the day of the high school exams is coming near. At his school, Keita is surrounded by friends who have a similar mentality to his household, almost as if he has surrounded himself with people with a sick mentality. His friends almost always have weird fantasies about Keita, and his sisters having some inappropriate fun at home. Keita just wants a normal life, where his sisters won't seduce him for once and just act like sisters instead. But even 100 locks on his door are unable to stop the two sisters from snooping into his room every day in hopes that they can seduce him with their beauty. When Keita wakes up, he quickly runs back to his school, because it's the only place where he can be safe and alone. However, he forgets that he has left his parent-teacher meeting invitation at home. Ako and Riko manage to find the paper in the dustbin, and since their parents are not in town, they decide to head to Keita's school themselves instead. Turns out, Ako and Riko are quite the celebrity in Keita's school, probably because the whole school is filled with degenerates with filthy thoughts. As soon as the two girls arrive at the gates, a huge crowd of fans flock around the two. Keita is pissed to see them even arrive at his school now, a place where he could have his peace. He reprimands them in front of all of their so-called fans, but when he realizes that they were here for his parent-teacher meeting, Keita feels a little guilty. Even though the girls always tried to seduce him, forced him to kiss them on the lip with a lot of tongue, and then the regular, unwanted flashing, man, these girls are literally abusing the guy. But even so, even after all of this, they were his sisters. Keita goes back and apologizes to them for being so harsh. Keita also reveals that he had decided that he would be going to the same high school as his sisters as they all head back home. Now, the school that the three had planned to go to is very competitive, and Keita is not so good at studies, so Ako decides to help Keita study. Turns out, Riko and Ako have some kind of rivalry when it comes to having their brother. Keito's stepmother even has a wager going on in the society who will marry Keita, Riko or Ako. Yes, you heard it right. People here are beyond messed up. Riko also wanted to help Keita out, but she too had passed the entrance exam on a fluke and accepts Ako as the better teacher. Ako starts the whole tutoring process in a very teasing costume. Keita was not very strong in his school, and this adds more to his distractions as he cannot concentrate whatsoever on anything but her sister's body. This feels so weird, but that's exactly what happens. The duo decides to read late into the night, and when Keita fails to concentrate, Ako shows him her chest so that he can find some focus. Apparently this works, and Keita studies through the night. The next day, when the exams finally arrive for the first subject, their whole plan from last night backfires, as during the exam, even though he knows the questions, Ako's chest ends up being all Keita can think about in class. The whole exam ends up being a disaster, and Keita tells what happened to his sister, who comes up with a better plan. The next night on their studies, Ako shows up with notes written all over her body, and I mean all over. She realizes that Keita is a pervert who just won't concentrate unless he has some filthy motives, which she does like, by the way, and so she decides to write down notes to help him study from her body. These notes, let's just say they are very well positioned. After the whole night of rigorous reading, in the next exam, Keita manages to score an 85 out of 100. This score was so abnormally high for his standards that his friends instantly know that his sisters are helping him, even going as far as thinking of some perverted way that they do so. When Keito returns back home with his test results, he is satisfied and tells Ako that they can now stop with all the weird methods of studying. But to truly test Keito, Ako decides to take his test. If he gets a question wrong, she will give him a passionate kiss. Okay. The questioning starts, and Ako is surprised to see that Keito answers correctly, so she purposely asks him a hard question. Ako is up to something, and the moment he cannot answer, she demands the punishment be paid. Now, what I'm about to say is very vile, so you all may want to cleanse your ears. The brother and sister then kiss passionately and are so involved that they are about to take it even further when Riko arrives on time to stop them. Apparently, she had been guilty over not being able to help Keito and had been learning how to cook in a pretty sus way that even shocked the ones that saw her cook. The food she made was super bad, but that did end up stopping Ako and Keita from doing the unthinkable. In a few weeks' time, Keito does manage to improve his scores somehow, even if it was a small amount, and gives all the credit to Ako and her very effective ways of teaching. He hugs her and thanks her as Riko watches jealously. Now, Keita is actually the only sane man in the house, as I told you before, but he too has started to get corrupted by the seductions of his sisters. Alabama has started to take over. Keita, however, somehow manages to control himself and declares to his sisters that there will no longer be unsupervised kissings. Kisses are now banned. This news saddens Ako and Riko, who try to protest that it's just a form of greeting, but Keita doesn't want to hear anything about it. Later that day, before school, as Keita is in the bathroom with his dad, washing his face, his father asks him how his studies are going on. When Keita tells him about the things happening and how Ako and Riko were helping him, the old man gets fired up. He gets a wee bit too excited and even dreams that perhaps he could be a high schooler too. Seriously, what is wrong with you, old man? He tries to tell Keita to enjoy it and somehow take more from his sisters if he can. Keita, however, is weirded out and tells his father that he doesn't like that kind of stuff. What he actually likes is sweets. From the bathroom stall next door, Riko hears their conversations. Riko already had been falling behind when it comes to seducing Ako, so she realizes that this was her opportunity to shine. She heads to the library to get tons of books on how to make candy and sweets. Obviously, she fails to make any of those sweets because she hasn't done any such thing in the past. Most of her time has gone in trying to seduce her brother, so we can't expect her to magically know other things. By the end of the day, Riko has already given up home, and with the last remaining money she has, she buys a single bar of chocolate. Riko is very pissed at herself and her lack of skills, and realizes that only one bar of chocolate was not a great offer, even for her standards. So, Riko decides to take some money from her stepfather and heads to his room, but in his room, she finds a book that can cause any child mental trauma when they see their parents read it. This seemingly adult book, though, has no effect on Riko. Instead, from the poster, she gets the idea that she could be the chocolate that Keito tastes. Riko then barges into Keito's room with lipstick that she has made out of the candy bar. She manages to create a loophole in the whole no kissing rule and makes Keita kiss her, claiming that he was having candy. Now, I don't know if Keita is gullible or has started to fully embrace the Alabama spirit, but he begins to kiss her vigorously. Ako arrives at the house searching for her siblings, but she finds that Riko has set up several booby traps so that she would not be able to get to them on time. In Keita's room, the kissing goes on rigorously, up to the point that Keita cannot control himself and decides to finish the whole job. Just as he pushes his sister to bed, Ako comes in to stop them both on time, saving this video from demonetization. The next day, Kita decides to stay at the school library to study for the exams, because clearly he has a lot of distractions in his home. Back at home, Ako and Riko prepare for their own day at school and reminisce about the time when they had first joined the middle school. Back then, Keita was getting into his teenage phase and would ignore them altogether and even mock them while he could. Despite all this, Keita seems to be their hero and center of attraction. Their morally and ethically wrong emotions had grown even deeper back then, and it continues till date. Back at school, Riko and Ako's teacher, Yuzuki, eavesdrops of the sisters' conversations with their respective friends and finds out their feelings for Kita. She is instantly creeped out by their thought and can't believe that she had been teaching such students. She really wants to help them and set their paths straight, but then their fantasies just make her worry for her own sanity. Ako and Riko are asked by their friends why they don't date other guys instead, and if it was a matter of lack of opportunity when it came to other boys. But this wasn't true. Every day, Ako and Riko get tons of love letters, but they think that the other boys are perverted and only think about physical love and seductions. Isn't that what they do with Kita? Back at the library, Kita cannot seem to concentrate, like always, and is filled with immoral thoughts about his sisters, and so he decides to return back home. On his way back, he decides to stop by a local shrine and finds that his sisters were there praying for his well-being. Apparently, the two girls had been coming to the shrine every day so that he could pass the entrance exams and be with them. Kita also decides to wish for something and remembers back in the day when he was a kid and wished that he could marry both of his sisters. Back then, his father had told them that polygamy was illegal. Well, at least the man has some respect for the law. Little kid Kita was super pissed that he couldn't marry both of his sisters back then, but now perhaps he can be thankful that he didn't wish for it after all. Back in the present, Kita is filled with memories of the past and decides to make another wish. He throws all of his savings into the wishing box and then makes a wish. A secret wish. Back at his school, Kita's degenerate friends can think of nothing but having fun with different girls in their school. However, when Kita tries to act high and mighty with them, they accuse him of being the master of seduction and doing all the dirty stuff with his stepsisters back at home. Kita is annoyed. He hasn't done anything with his sisters. He explains that he only likes girls with big hearts. As he closes his eyes, imagining such a woman in his life, he accidentally ends up groping one of his classmates, Miharu. Now, I don't know how such a thing can be an accident, and neither can Miharu, who promptly turns and slaps Keita so hard that even by the time he is home, his face is red with the slap marks. When Ako and Riko inquire about the slap, Keita just runs away to his room, and Ako and Riko become suspicious that Keita has been cheating. Not sure how someone can cheat on their own siblings, but that's what the two girls think, and they start following him around rigorously to make sure. That's it for part 1. If this video gets 2,000 likes, I will continue to part 2. Have a great day.